In this demo, you're going to see how you can modernize your existing on-premise applications using Anthos, specifically how you can use Anthos deployed on VMware. In this video, we're going to demo our Anthos on VMware setup, as well as show you how we can manage some of our GKE clusters running inside Google Cloud Platform. Here you can see we've got 3 clusters. One of them's a Hipster Store Canada cluster running in GKE. Another one's Hipster Store cluster running in the United States. And we've got our Anthos on VMware cluster called Kyle Arctic. Let's have a look inside these clusters. If we jump into Kyle Arctic, you can see the details of the cluster, how many cores are available, how much memory. You can see we're authenticated and logged into the cluster. If we look at our storage configuration, you can see we've got a few persistent volumes providing storage to our pods. If we look at the nodes, you'll see we've got 5 nodes in this cluster. Once you dive into the nodes, you can see the various containers running, the CPU requests, memory limits, storage, those type of things. Also, what namespace it's in and when it was created. You can dive into the details. You can also look at the YAML, see any events that you want to look at. Jumping into workloads, this view allows us to look into all the things that are going inside our cluster, the various namespaces and the various containers that are deployed. You can sort through them. We'll look through our on-prem cluster right now. We'll check out the namespaces. You can see we've got 6 namespaces inside this cluster. Some of them are core services, but we've also got things like Istio deployed. GKE Connect connects us up into the GCP console. We've got Config Management and Cert Manager. We'll dive into these elements in other videos. Let's look at our GKE Connect namespace. You can see we've got a couple of pods deployed. These pods are connecting us up to the GCP console so we can get all the telemetry and information from our clusters and manage them through Google Cloud Platform. You can look at the details, you can even see revision history. And again, you can look at the YAML. This is a nice feature. It gets us to stay out of kubectl and command line. Looking at services and ingress points, you can see all the services that are deployed in the cluster. We can sort through them. Let's dive into the on-prem cluster again. You can see all our services. We've also got an Istio ingress gateway. Looking at our applications, you can see we've got Stackdriver deployed in this cluster that's sending logs up into the Stackdriver service in GCP. Diving into the configuration, you're able to see what secrets have been provisioned, what namespaces they're for, and also what cluster they're in. This is a nice way to be able to manage many clusters at scale, all from a single pane of glass. Having a look at storage, you can see we're providing persistent volumes to several pods. Going back to our cluster view, you can see here where our provider is. That just shows that we've got a label that's saying it's Anthos on VMware. One of the nice features here, just like in GKE, is you find out about upgrades. You're able to look into and see what the commands are to provide an upgrade into your on-prem cluster. You can see here we're on 1.1.0 and there's upgrades available, so we can decide when the right time is to upgrade our cluster. Here's a view you're probably used to looking at. This is our vCenter console. It'll look a lot like any other cluster you have, but we're leveraging it to be able to deploy Anthos on VMware. Here we've got 3 bare metal nodes. Let's dive in and have a look at the nodes. You can see what VMs we have. These are all the virtual machines that are Kubernetes nodes, the ones we showed you up in the GCP console earlier. You can see we're leveraging vSAN here for our data store. One of the nice aspects is each of the user clusters that are deployed get put in their own folder group. We can also do things like resource allocation and resource pools with this. This is the nodes I showed you earlier. We've got 5 nodes here. When people onboard more applications, we can add more nodes, all done through the API. You can also see we've got things like Big IP, HA proxy. We're testing various configurations. You can see here we've got 1 virtual network attached to these nodes. Let's dive into command line, looking at some kubectl commands. Here you can see the same nodes. It also shows our version, how many days they've been online. We could configure some role labels if we wanted to, but I'm just leaving these ones blank. Looking at our namespaces, you can see we've got a number of namespaces deployed. As I mentioned, some of these are providing core services, but we've also added other things on. We'll start to show you the Hipster Store and some of these other components later. There's the GKE Connect namespace that we showed you earlier, connecting our on-prem clusters up to the GCP console. Config Management is managing all our configuration. We'll dive into that in the next video. If we look at our persistent volumes, you can see we've got a number of volumes configured, providing storage to our pods. Let's go into the marketplace and deploy an application into our on-prem cluster. This example, we're going to deploy InfluxDB, a popular open source database. You can see what it's all about. We can take the option to configure it. Here you can see we have 3 clusters, the ones I showed you earlier. In this case, we're going to pick our VMware cluster. Let's not put it in default. Let's create a new namespace. The rest of the things we can leave default. We won't turn Stackdriver on for now. We'll go ahead and deploy. Within a few seconds, the application starts to deploy. If we go back to our cluster and look at our namespaces, you can see we've got a new namespace called InfluxDB-1. Let's watch that namespace. The deployer has already started to create the container, and it's running in 23 seconds. Now we've got a database up. If we dive into the console, you can start to see all the different aspects of what we've deployed from an application perspective. You can also look at the YAML if you wanted to make adjustments to this deployment or see what was going on. If we go back into the console and look at our applications, you can see we've got a new application deployed called InfluxDB-1. As I showed you, you can dive into these and start to see what's going on. We've also got the Stackdriver application deployed. That's sending logs up into GCP from our on-prem cluster. You can start to see all the aspects of your application. You don't have to manage this all through command line. There you go. I've shown you the first part of our video series of the base Kubernetes clusters running on VMware. This is the baseline of the Anthos configuration that we're going to show you in this series. To recap, we showed you how you can leverage your existing on-premise VMware infrastructure to quickly get started with Anthos. You also saw a sneak peek of Anthos config management, which we'll take a deeper dive in our next video.